The number one regret that people had, people who were dying, who knew that they were crossing over and making their transition, the top regret was I wish I'd have had the courage to live the life that I knew I was destined to live. In other words, that I had a purpose, that I knew that there was something greater that I came here to do, that I signed up for something other than just to fit in and to go along and to follow somebody else's rules. And most of us are not, don't allow ourselves the freedom to listen to those internal callings, those things that we all feel are just so important to us. I went to my father's grave in 1974, a man that I just hated. I was filled with rage and antipathy and anger towards. And I was called to go there at the age of 34. And I went there because I was just angry. I wanted to make a connection. I just couldn't believe that this man, he'd been dead for 10 years and I had just found out. And I stood on his grave for the longest time just cursing and being angry. And I went back to my car. It was down in Biloxi, Mississippi. And I got into the rental car to drive back to New Orleans, and then I was going to fly back up to New York because I was a professor at St. John's University in New York City. I was been thinking about wanting to write and all of that, but nothing was going right for me at that time. I was out of shape, things weren't working well, I was drinking, I had been doing drugs, I was in a bad relationship. My whole life was just not on the kind of path that it is on today. And I got back in the car to go, and I felt I'd finally done that, and I had a calling. I was called back by some invisible intelligence, some burning desire, something that we call light, something that we call the impersonal part of us that is always directing us, and it's always directing you as well. You're listening to it sometimes. Most of the time we ignore it in the name of fitting in or doing when I don't have time, or I'm too old, or I'm too fat, or I'm too skinny, or I'm too white, or I'm too black, or I'm too poor, and endless we go with all of the reasons why we can't fulfill a destiny that we know is ours, that we signed up for, that we're here for in this infinite universe, that who we are is not this physical body that we're in that is here for a moment and gone. Who we are is this infinite intelligence, and we forget that. The same intelligence that created this infinite universe that never ends is you. You manifested in this infinite, divine, organizing intelligence. You're a part of all of it. And I got a calling, and the calling for somehow said, go back. You're not complete. That's not why you were sent here. That's not why I wanted you to go to your father's grave. I went back. Something came over me at the age of 34. I have no idea what it was. I do know now that it was light, it was God, it was that divine intelligence, whatever you call it. What I said at that gravesite, from this moment on, as I send you love, I send you kindness. Who am I to judge you? Who am I to condemn you? Who am I to be critical of you? I don't even know what you were living through and why you had to do what you did. I send you love from now on. I'd never had another bad dream about him. I was never angry about him. But the most intriguing thing happened is that my life made an entire shift. A shift that all of us can make at any moment. We never know. These callings are so strong, and yet they're always there. After I left Biloxi, I flew up to New York, flew down to Fort Lauderdale. I had 2 weeks. I checked into a motel on A1A, the Spindrift Motel, and I wrote for 14 days. And I wrote a book called Your Erroneous Zones, which became one of the largest selling books in history. And it propelled my life in a whole new way. I stopped drinking. I started getting exercising more. My relationships all changed. The divine person that I was to meet showed up. My children showed up. Everything changed and shifted because I was willing to listen to that inner voice, that light that said, go back. Another time, just a few years later, it was 1976, I was driving on the Long Island Expressway from where I lived in Huntington, New York, into the city. I was about to receive tenure, which at that time I was 36 years old. I had written 3 textbooks. I was a star there as far as they were concerned. I was going to begin, to live a life in which I was going to be a professor for the rest of my life. Tenure, guaranteed employment for the rest of my life, something that everybody at the university longs for. I was ready for it. And I pulled off the Long Island Expressway as I was contemplating that. And I sat on the side of the shoulder there for about a half an hour, just watching the cars go by, wondering and asking myself, do I really want to get tenure and stay here and do what I've been doing I've already done this. I know how to do it. Am I going to be in the same office doing the same thing? Am I going to live 90 years, or am I going to live 1 year 90 times over and over again? And I decided that I just couldn't do it. And I just felt, this amazing moment came over of freedom. It was like it just was lifted off to me. And I got back on the freeway, got off at the exit at Grand Central and Utopia Parkway, parked my car right outside Marillac Hall, went up to the second floor, went into the dean's office, Dean Sarah Fassenmeyer, and I told her, I've written this book, and it's now just been published. It's called Your Erroneous Zones, that I wrote also as a result of another calling. And I said, I've got to take it out to the world. I've got to talk about it. I appreciate the fact that I could work here for the rest of my life, but it's just not something that I can do. And she tried to get me to dissuade me from such a thing. These kinds of callings, we all have these. We know that we have a purpose. You already know that you have a purpose. You know, you're listening to that all the time. It's there. The idea that you can't do it, or that you shouldn't do it, or that my whole life has been impacted by listening and being willing to understand that. And there's a quote that I talk about at the seminar that'll be a part of this course, and it goes like this. It's from William Blake. He said, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern, by William Blake. We would begin to see, I don't know if you've ever heard of a group called The Doors, or Jim Morrison, a rock group. They took the name from that essay that Aldous Huxley wrote called The Doors of Perception. There are things that are known, and there are things that are unknown. And in between are the doors. And even Jesus said, I am the door. That is, the internal I amness within God is the door that you can open and discover so many new things.